Good morning. Welcome to Bahai's Today. My name is Bob Etemad, and I'm your host today on Mainline Network, brought to you by the Bahai community of Radnor. This monthly program focuses on initiating conversations on social change and community building. Programs are offered monthly with guests from the Bahai community who will share their experiences on this journey of making the world a better place for all of us. Our guest today is Professor Mikhail Sergeev. He is a PhD in the philosophy of religion, who obtained his PhD at Temple University. He is a historian of religion, philosopher, and writer. Sergeev teaches history of religions, philosophy, and contemporary art at the University of Arts in Philadelphia. He's served as co-chair of the Department of Religion, Philosophy, and Theology at the Wilmette Institute of Chicago, period. He has authored more than 200 scholarly, journalistic, and creative works. He has published in the United States, Canada, Japan, Poland, Greece, and the Czech Republic, as well as the Netherlands, Uzbekistan, and Russia. His articles have been translated into Polish and Japanese, and his books have been reviewed in Germany, Japan, Poland, Russia, Slovakia, and the United States. He has authored and edited 12 books, including the monograph Theory of Religious Cycles, Tradition, Modernity, and the Bahai Faith. Sergeev, welcome to the Mikhail, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you. I'm very happy for this invitation.
So we, as of course the invitation and the introduction indicates, we really would like to first know a little bit more about you and your journey coming here to the United States and what brought you here to become a professor.
I came to the United States in 1990, to be more precise, on December 26th of 1990, 6 months before the collapse of the Soviet Union. And I came to the United States to study religion. The thing is that I was brought up, raised in the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was an atheist country, and I was brought up as an atheist. We did not study religion. When I was in the university, we studied religion in the course that was called scientific atheism. So from that moment on, I realized that I need some kind of systematic view of religion, and that was always lacking in my education. So with that in mind, I wanted to study religion, but not to study religion from a particular religious point of view. My father comes from an Orthodox Christian background, my mother from an Orthodox Jewish background. I wanted to study religion in a secular environment, and that's what I found in the United States at Temple.
What was it that created an interest in religion in you? There's so many different fields of study. So what was it what made religion interesting to you?
I think that is related to two issues in my personal life. The first issue was the Soviet ideology. The Soviet ideology was like a religion because it was all-embracing and it gave you the meaning of life. And when I rejected that ideology, and that happened in 1984, I found myself in a situation where there is nothing inside me that gives me any meaning to my life. I think that led me to my journal to discover religions. The second issue, and again, this is my personal issue, was that I was, as Russians say, half-breed, half Jewish, half Russian. People who would reject the Soviet ideology, but who were fully Russian or fully Jewish or fully anything else, they would usually come back to their tradition. But I was not sure what tradition should I come back to. I felt that Judaism is part of me, but I also felt that Orthodox Christianity is part of me. So this kind of split consciousness, led me to find more about various religions and maybe to find a religion that would be able to glue those two identities of mine together.
Fascinating. So upon your decision to come to the United States and do your formal studies and your structured studies, you found that this would be then not only a personal interest, but a professional one as well. How did you find the training here? Did you find the training, was it simply that it was neutral enough for you? Was it rich enough for you? How were the resources for you? How was the training overall?
I was very lucky to be accepted into Temple University because Temple had, I do not know about the Department of Religion at Temple now, but back then, 30 years ago, Temple was a unique place. They had a unique Department of Religion because on the one hand, it was a secular training. On the other hand, every religion was taught to us by the representative of that religion. So I sat on the lectures of the rabbi when we studied Judaism. Hinduism and Buddhism was taught by a guy from India. Japanese Buddhism was taught by a guy from Japan, etc. So that gave me a sense of authenticity when studying religion. Now, another advantage for me personally was that the teachers were liberal enough to allow you to pursue your own course of study. As a former Soviet person, I was always eager to be left alone. That was what was lacking in the Soviet Union. Everyone in the Soviet Union wanted something from you. And here, no one wanted anything from you. They just want you to pursue your course of study. And that's what I did. I feel very lucky to have been trained there.
Wonderful. So share a little bit about the experience, if you could, the experience of teaching others. Now that you're in the position of having acquired a framework for yourself, what do you have some insight as to what it is like to teach, to help others perhaps come up with frameworks for themselves? What is that like?
I've been teaching religion now for 30 years in various places. And I taught religion at the University of the Arts for about 25 years. I teach about 5 courses per year, per academic year, and in each course I have about 30 students. So those students come from various religious or non-religious backgrounds. I have a lot of Catholics, I have Protestants, not so many Jews. Sometimes I have Muslims. Once I had a Japanese girl who was Shinto. And I have plenty of atheists who are in their own personal spiritual journey, who are trying to discover their spiritual ways. Now, first I was worried because, as you know, Americans do not like to talk about politics and religion because those two subjects usually result in conflict. And I was afraid when I was giving my first lectures that the conflict will erupt in the middle of the class while I'm teaching. But to my surprise, I have to say, number one, in all 30 years of teaching, I never had any conflict with my students. And the secret to that is quite simple. I trust their judgment, and they see that I'm honest in my personal pursuit of the truth. I'm impartial, and I accept any views that they want to share. I think that's a normal attitude for any teacher, either in school or the university, especially the university when people are grown up. And that's, I think, how we proceeded, and that was fine. Now, I teach religion in a secular environment, so I do not teach a specific religion. I teach world religions in general. I teach Asian religions, introduction to the Bible, but I tell my students at the outset that you can be religious, you can be anti-religious, you can be atheist, you can be anything you want as long as you respect the subject of your study. You have to show respect to this because after all, this is part of the spiritual heritage of all humanity. And no matter what you think about this, you have to respect this the way you respect your parents. You know, you may disagree with your parents, you may even rebel against your parents, but you still have to respect them. So that is the borderline for me, and it worked pretty well.
Wonderful. Along the same lines, I'd like to ask if you could share, do you have any insights as to perhaps in the last 30 years, changes in students over time? Are you finding that students are the same in the sense that their willingness to engage differences in cultures and traditions has pretty much been the same? Do you find it to be more? Do you find them to be more curious? Do you find them to be more attached to their personal traditions or less attached to their personal traditions? Do you see any trends over the last few decades?
Well, let me think for a moment. I would say that my students are pretty much the same. And by the way, that's what I like about the university. I always tell that the university is the prototype for eternity. You come every year and you are 1 year older, but your students are of the same age.
Yes.
Students are of the same age, but I'm getting older. So probably my perspective is changing and they interact with me differently because one thing is when we have an age difference of 20 years, another one is we have, if we have an age difference of 40 years. But overall, I think the students are pretty much the same. They are, well, our students at the University of the Arts, they are extremely open-minded because they are artists. And they are not thinking about money and career, but they are thinking about, artistic and spiritual discoveries. So even if you are dealing with people who have no religious tradition whatsoever, who are, explicitly atheists still, without even, without even realizing that, those students are actually quite spiritual and, open to new vistas. As for cultural diversity, that's what I teach. I tell my students that without knowing different religions, you cannot really understand and penetrate foreign cultures because culture is based on religion. Whether people want this or not, whether people forgot about this. And if you want to really understand a different culture, you have to know some basics, some religious ideas, philosophical ideas. People are usually taking this quite seriously because most of them did not have any exposure to even to European culture. They have never been to Europe. So they are very America-centered people who want to expand their horizons. As for the long-term change, and that's what I aim at always. I think there has been some changes in some of my students because I know some of them contacted me 5 years after we met in class, 10 years. I have one student who keeps contacting me and they tell me how my classes actually influenced their spiritual direction. I think that is the greatest reward a teacher could have.
Yes. So along that line, One of the things that this program is trying to investigate is how social transformation is impacted by the things that different people that participate in this program are involved in. So I pose the question then to you, is studying religion for yourself and for your students, you've answered this a bit, but maybe elaborate, how does that impact on society as a whole? That is, to have the opportunity to go beyond one's own personal religious tradition. You've answered this, but if you could again elaborate, why should we do this? Why should a student be perhaps suggested to do a study of comparative religion?
Yeah, personally, I think comparative religion is imperative. And unfortunately, at the University of the Arts, after all the reorganizations and purges, we got rid of so many courses that enrich culturally our students. Of course, this was due to objective things, like our situation with coronavirus, for example, and economic hardship, financial hardship. But still, here is the thing. I've taught at the universities for 30 years, and I see a trend that worries me. More and more universities are trying to rely on the so-called scientific method of evaluating your teaching. They want to quantify everything, goals, objectives, methods, skills. However, humanities is that area that cannot be quantified. Mm-hmm. How can you quantify the personal relationship between the teacher and the student, the emotional conversation, the long-term effect that this conversation will bring to a student? I know myself, I had 2 or 3 great teachers in my life who really changed the course, the direction of my journey. And I know that this is completely unpredictable and it is impossible to quantify. But when the universities are trying to quantify the results of humanities, they actually end up missing the most important dimension of the educational process. Unfortunately, that is the trend, and I simply ignore it. There is an old Soviet way to deal with those kind of things. You say yes and do nothing, and keep teaching the way you are teaching. Leo Tolstoy, the famous Russian writer, once said, and I'm not quoting literally, but I'm paraphrasing, that in order to save the world, you have to start from yourself. So first you have to change yourself. And from this personal change, the social transformation will eventually occur. And that's what I think I'm doing, because I'm changing, at least I'm trying to influence one student at a time. And those students later in their life will suddenly realize certain things that they would not have realized without having taken my class. So that's what I tell my students, my atheist students especially. So if in 10 or 20 years you will come to God and you will start praying, remember me.
That's wonderful. I have a quick side question. I wondered if what you feel the impact of the technology that we currently have as compared to 20 years ago is having on the ability of people to do comparisons. Do you find it to be, do they live in their own echo chambers more, and are they ending up reinforcing their own beliefs and their sphere of belief? Or do you find that these students are reaching across their own areas of comfort to engage the differences that are out there?
Yeah, my personal impression about the American students is that, again, at least our students at the University of the Arts, they are very open-minded, and they are not trying to, isolate themselves in their own echo chamber. No, they are very open to various perspectives, and they are excited to study, various cultures. They always, by the way, excited that I'm from Russia, because they, of course, know nothing about Russia, and they learn about Russia from me. So no, I do not see any negative impact of technology on the openness of the minds of the students. The only negative, technology is great. It gave us more possibilities for teaching. Take the YouTube videos, for example, the availability of so much information. But the negative impact of technology on teaching, I think, is that many universities are relying or will start relying heavily on distance learning. And of course, this saves a lot of time, money, rooms, travel, etc. But I think that nothing can substitute a personal connection between the teacher and the student. And you cannot form this connection via Zoom, unfortunately.
That's very insightful and important commentary. I think as we move toward trying to become more connected after, we hope would be some improvement in the situation we have with regards to the pandemic. I wondered if you could share some final thoughts on just where are we going when it comes to comparative religious studies? Is there a trend that you find that is interesting? Is there a methodology? You mentioned having people of traditions being able to share their traditions personally while you were doing your education. And perhaps now we have, for example, the ability to literally go to, even though it is virtual, at least to some extent, going to different places around the world, literally, and having the ability to hear people from other countries. Do you find that the future is bright for comparative religious studies? Do you find that the pressures are high for comparative religious studies and that there may not be as much interest put into it? Do you think the secularism or the, I want to almost say, polarizing ways of thinking that have occurred lately here in the United States, do you think either of those trends that we hear about are threatening comparative religious studies?
Look, I think many current events are threatening the spirit of comparative study, the spirit of being friends and neighbors to each other, no matter what country you live in. Not only the polarization in the United States, which we observe, but also the polarization in Russia that I observed through the Russian internet. In spite of all this, I think the long-term trend is going toward comparative studies. The global world is becoming smaller and smaller, and people want to learn more about other people's culture. And I think that is our future. And I would also point out that in order to fully embrace another culture, you have to know at least the basics of language. And this is a tremendous lack in American university education. People do not know languages, people do not study languages, and therefore they cannot fully understand the spirit of culture without being able to read literature in other languages, etc. So I think it would be great if America would improve in this respect as well. I see in my 30 years that America is able to improve. I think that is one of the greatest qualities of this country. I think the linguistic education and comparative education should be also improved, and I think the future is ours.
Wonderful. Well, Professor, thank you very much for joining us today on behalf of the Baha'i community of Radnor Township. We very much appreciate the opportunity of speaking with you today.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Pleasure.